When you say thankful for your soup, it's called gratitude. I've been watching too much Ted Lasso.
You recognize it?
Good, thank you. Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
Fantastic, yeah, it's really good. It's really great. Summer is far in the rear view mirror, if I have to be honest.
Thank you.
It's like so far away.
The girls have been back, the girls have been in school for 4 weeks already. Yeah, this is week 5.
And you were giving, you know, you had super bowl.
I'm taking it off this week.
Would I not have a sleep taken?
What happened?
Yeah. They invited me to come across the street and hang out, I forgot to go there. Hi, everybody, I think that we are currently live, it is noon on Tuesday. When I was a kid, 10 o'clock on Tuesdays was time for tornado drills, but I don't live there anymore. We live in South Florida, and every day is hurricane drill when you live in South Florida. You all seem to have your waters and your coffees and your, non-perishable items and all that kind of good stuff. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Rabbi Greg Weissman. We are pleased to have you, and if I can invite everyone to do 3 things for me. Check your cell phone ringers, take your seats, and open your ears and close your mouths. So we can get started, so we have our conversation together. So as we are doing as a congregation, we are exploring these various midot, these various values of our tradition in preparation for the High Holy Days. And I'm gonna refer to a question that Phyllis asked just a few minutes ago, which is, why do we only focus on gratitude for the High Holy Days? And my response was, we don't. Gratitude is something that we should be expressing throughout the year. And this month of Elul and the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are an opportunity that we have set aside for ourselves to refocus ourselves on doing the things that we should have already been doing all along. So it's not that gratitude is only for the month of Elul or only for the High Holy Days, it's that this is when we say to ourselves, what are those things that we haven't been doing as well of a job of during this past year that we want to put special focus on in the year that is about to begin? And gratitude is one of those things. As opposed to, I would suggest that, repentance is something that, while yes, we're supposed to do repentance throughout the year, and there is that wonderful tradition or piece teaching in our tradition that suggests that we should repent a day before we die. And of course, since most of us don't know when that day is going to be, the implication is that we should be doing repentance as soon as possible and every single day, lest today be that day before we die that we didn't repent and we wish that we had. So there is a special focus on repentance during this time of the year. This is also the time of year that we ask forgiveness from the Holy One for what we've done. But gratitude really is a throughout the year thing and something that we wanted to highlight this year. Now, as I begin the conversation, I also want to share that I'm going to have a particular focus today on the way that gratitude, or in Hebrew often referred to as hakarat hatov, speaking of the good, showing our thanks for the good, how it comes out in a specific part of our tradition called Musar. Some of you just came from a different Musar experience across the hall. If you did, please give us a sun salutation. No, I'm kidding. For those of you who don't know the joke, we had a yoga and Musar and meditation program that just wrapped. Musar is this beautiful part of our tradition that invites us to study these various midot, these various character traits or values that we can put particular focus on. This year, I am exposing our 8th grade students to the study of Musar. And thanks to the Musar Institute has put together a fantastic curriculum specifically for working with teens who, if we can be honest, can probably benefit from learning how to focus themselves on particular character traits as they are in that transitional period from being children to being adults. But make no bones about it. Musar, while it is certainly applicable for teens, is certainly for adults as well. Okay? So, as we are entering into our learning together and knowing that we'll be looking at words of Torah together, if I can invite you to say the blessing for the study of Torah with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Aileen, I know you were joining us. Are we sure that are we live streaming, or is it just folks joining us on the Zoom today?
We are live streaming, but there has not been anybody yet to enter the Zoom room.
Very good, thank you. Just want to make sure I'm not missing something
Certainly.
on my end. For that reason, I'm going to make our screen really small over here because we don't need to see ourselves. We can see the slide deck.
I suddenly saw Margaret said she was going to be.
Margaret's not here. I can't help her with that.
No.
Yeah.
You want me to text her?
I need to focus on the lemon. All right. So, starting with the very first things that we do in the morning, Mark and Susan, the very first thing we do in the morning, right? As Jews, we know that there is a way to do everything. There is a way you're supposed to lace your shoes, and the way you're supposed to cut your fingernails, and the way you're supposed to do everything. And our morning experience, if we are committed to our tradition in such a way, is fully scripted for us. Meaning, there are words that we are supposed to say, the very last words we say before we go to bed. Anyone want to guess what those are?
Shema.
The Shema, very good, we know that. And there are words that we are supposed to say the very moment we realize that we have opened our eyes into a new day of life.
No doubt.
Is there someone who wants to read the translation of that up on the screen for us? Anita, go ahead, please.
First words in the morning. Modeh ani. Offers thanks to you, ever-living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust?
So every morning we can say, and because I wrote this, I wrote the Hebrew in the masculine, modeh ani. If you identify as female, it'll be modah ani. I offer thanks to you, ever-living sovereign. Modeh ani lefanecha melechai v'kayam, shehechazarta bi nishmati bechem la'raba emunatecha, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust? The very first word out of our lips every single day is a word of gratitude. Modeh. When you're walking down the street and someone does something nice for you, what do you say to them in Hebrew? Toda rabah. Toda, moda, where you hear the lahodot, this is the verb to offer our thanks. And so we begin our day with thanks. All right, Aileen, I'm hearing whispers in the room that I'm going to hand you to deal with and tell those of you in the room, not much I can do from here. There's something with the Zoom. Don't know what it is.
Thank you. I'll try to figure it out. Thank you.
Yep. Could be operator error. We don't know. All right. Just a few minutes later, if you are a person who is waking up, you get up, you say Modeh ani, you go to the restroom, you say a blessing there, gratitude that all of your openings have remained open and your closings are closed. That is actually the word of the words of the blessing that you offer when you take care of your bodily needs. And then a little bit later, as you make your way into the morning service, we have that section of the service that is referred to as Nisim B'chol Yom, the miracles of everyday life. And another one of those blessings refers to gratitude. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, who delivers, who provides me with all my needs. We begin our morning with a sense of gratitude. To whom? To the Holy One. For what? For another day. Another morning, another day, knowing that I am getting what I need to make my way through the day. Now, if we were cynics, and we should all be cynics when we're doing a text study, what is the cynical question you might ask about, and particularly the second blessing?
What if things don't go so well?
So what if I don't feel like I have all my needs? What if I wake up and this hurts and that's not working and I'm in another day in the hospital and everything is going wrong? What does the tradition say you're supposed to tell yourself in a day when you feel like all of your needs are not being met? What are you supposed to say?
It's up to you.
No,
Okay.
thank you anyway. Barbara, do you need some water?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for providing you with all my needs. This is not just the simple transactional thank you, as you would say to the newspaper salesman for giving you the newspaper when you hand them a quarter in the 1940s. This is a mindset. This establishes a mindset of gratitude. That my needs, as many of my needs are not being met, on the big picture, the fact that I'm alive means on the whole, the Holy One is blessing me with my needs. Now, we all have a choice to make in the way that we make our way through life. Either we can walk through life saying, my needs are not being met. Or we can walk through life saying, my needs in the whole are being met. That is not necessarily an accounting of how many are and how many are not. It is a mindset. And if you walk through the world telling yourself, my needs are not being met, what is your experience of the world going to be?
Negative.
Negative. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel lousy. You're going to feel everything is always getting worse. But if you walk through the world saying with a mindset of my needs are being met, it's going to lift yourself up. That decision that we each have, that decision to choose how we're going to engage with our sense of what these values are, that decision that we get to decide whether or not we feel like we have reason to express gratitude, that we get to decide how we're going to express gratitude, that is part of the essence of the Musar part of our tradition. That we can tune up or tune down these experiences. And that whether and how we do will have an impact on the way we make our way through life and how it feels. Just to give you a sense of what other parts are in Musar, there's patience, there's trust, there's lists and lists, but these types of these values that we have that we can choose, and typically in Musar practice, you decide to take on one particular midah for a period of time. I'm going to spend the next 4 weeks focusing on gratitude, looking for opportunities to express gratitude, looking for reasons to feel gratitude, looking for all those different things. Then you may, you work on that for a bit. When you feel comfortable with your gratitude, you move on to something else. So, now that we know why we're supposed to express gratitude, and now that we know to a degree how we're supposed to be thinking about it, let's get into what does this look like.
Rabbi Greg, if I may just pause for a moment. The
Yeah.
Zoom link is now correct on our website. We apologize for any inconvenience. So if anybody in the room has been texting their friends, please ask them to go back to the website and click on the Zoom link for today's session. Thank you.
For the live stream for that. Okay. Later in the service, not the first words of the morning, but later in the service, we're also given another sense of expression. Ilu Finu, were our mouths as full of song as the vast sea, our tongues as full of joyous songs as the many waves, our lips as full of praise as the depths of the heavens, we still could not thank you sufficiently. Okay? I'll read it again and I'll ask for your interpretation. Were our mouths as full of song as vast as the sea, our tongues as full of joyous song as the many waves, our lips as full of praise as the depths of the heavens, we still could not thank you sufficiently. What does that mean?
No matter. Those examples are infinite.
Yeah.
So no matter what we think of, it could never be enough.
Yeah. No matter how wide and deep our expressions of thankfulness and gratitude are, our songs of praise for God, we're just barely scratching the surface of what it is that we have to be thankful for. Again, just another big black line underscoring of the idea that our tradition directs us to enter the world from a place of gratitude. We should look for reasons to show our thankfulness. Now, listen, we could say, why? Well, because we owe it to God. But I think a better reason is because we will feel better about our lived experience if we do. If we convince ourselves that we have reason to be grateful, we will have reasons to be grateful. If we convince ourselves that we don't have reasons to be grateful, we will live our life without gratitude and see nothing good in the world. What would you rather live? I'm going with option A. Convincing myself to be grateful and finding reasons to do it throughout the way that I live. Yeah, Phyllis.
In other words, what's the opposite of grateful? You know, does it have to do with entitlement?
So it can come across in a couple of different ways. Entitlement is certainly one, right? But despair is another way that a lack of gratitude can show itself, right? The idea here is that if you live your life with there's nothing good in my life, you really got nothing to keep you going. But I see it.
Yeah, I can't understand how I can put entitlement with gratefulness.
Well, I think it's an opposite, meaning, right, it is, I mean, yes, I'm not disagreeing with Phyllis. I'm saying that one opposite of gratitude could be entitlement, meaning that I have things that are good in my life, but I'm responsible for them. Or there's nothing good in my life at all. Entitlement, I think, is the first one, right? Listen, these first three things that I've shared are all about expressing gratitude specifically to the Holy One for the things that we have, right? And a different person might walk the world saying, whatever goodness I have in my world is because of what I've done. That's a sense of entitlement. Or equally differently bad is there's nothing good in my life. Also a lack of gratitude, but it manifests itself differently. Petty.
Could you tell me the words in Hebrew, because is that in my siddur?
Yeah, it's Elul Finu.
Do I say that in prayer when I come on Fridays? No.
It's a part of the morning service, not a part of the evening service, right? So just 2-second aside into the structure of Hebrew prayer. The core piece of the morning and the evening services are similar. You've got Baruch Hu, you've got the Shema and the blessings around it, whether it's Yotzer or Ma'ariv, and Ahavat Lam Ahava Rabbah, Shema Ve'ahavta, you've got Micha Mocha, and then the evening of Hashkivenu, then you've got the Amidah, then you've got the Aleinu and Kaddish. That's sort of the core piece of a morning service and an evening service. But there's a lot more we do in the morning. The Torah service is traditionally part of the morning service as well, at least on Mondays, Fridays, and Shabbats. And there's sections of warm-up, as they taught me in rabbinical school, warm-up blessings that get us ready for the morning service. Birkot HaShachar, the blessings of the morning that include the blessings of everyday miracles. Psukei de Zimra, songs and celebration of praise of God that literally take us from the first words you say, Modeh Ani, all the way to Baruch Hu. There's all these blessings and songs and psalms that we say specifically in the morning that are getting us ready for our morning prayers. And Elul Finu comes from that part of the service. Before the Baruch Hu in the morning, they are optional but encouraged. Right? Listen, some people come in right for the Baruch Hu, right? But people come early and they really want to get, for those of you who exercise, maybe you stretch a little bit first. Maybe you warm up a little bit. That's probably better for you. Some folks, listen, I only got 20 minutes. I'm going to hit those weights and get on the way. It's like the same thing with blessings. Sure. All right.
I have one.
Lauren, yeah,
Probably tangential.
I'll bring us back.
Thanks. I have more religious, members of my family,
Mhm.
not, nuclear, but, so if you ask them, how are you? Or if I ask a religious friend, I would always almost feel like they didn't want to connect with me if they would say, Baruch Hashem.
Right.
Right, but instead now I can understand they're grateful. So,
Not tangential at all. Right on point. Right on point. What Lauren's
I find
suggesting.
it very interesting now that we have this I've heard you and had this conversation.
Yeah. Well,
I might adopt it myself now.
what Lauren's referring to, for those who are not familiar, is in, and this is cultural less, I mean, it's cultural within the more observant part of the community. In the more observant part of the community, when you see someone and you greet them and you say, how are you? The answer is, thank God, right? Baruch Hashem, thank God, thanks God, right? Implied in that is, well, right? I'm well. But they'd rather underscore their gratitude for feeling well by responding, thank God, Baruch Hashem, than by just saying, I'm well. It's this exactly on point. This manifests exactly. All right. Moving us a little bit into our tradition, a story from the Talmud. Ben Zoma would say, a good guest, what does he say? It was a lovely evening, I'm going home. No, good guest, come, you can stay on. How much effort did the host expend on my behalf? How much meat did the host bring before me? How much wine did he bring before me? How many loaves did he bring before me? All the effort that he expended only for me, right? That when you're a good guest, what are you supposed to be thinking about?
Thankful.
To whom? Yeah, to whom? To your host, right? And think about, listen, we've all been to dinner parties. We've all, I'm assuming, hosted dinner parties. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get the house ready. You gotta, and if you're in a house, like I think many of us, where we don't keep our house ready for guests on a daily basis. Right, with 3 children, the house is, so we gotta get the house, we gotta do all the stuff, we gotta get ready. And we gotta go shopping, and we gotta buy, and we gotta cook, and we gotta live, and listen, if you're a person who enjoys putting that out into the world, it's a great joy. But when you go to someone's house, you should be focusing your attention internally, at least. Think about all the effort that my host put forth that I can enjoy this meal with them. All the things that they did for me. And when you say thank you for having me on the way out, this can be, we talk about in prayer that there's the keva and there's the kavanah. Keva are the words that you say of the prayer, and the kavanah is the intentionality. You should be, how is your mind thinking and focusing when you're saying thank God for creating the universe? When we say ma'ariv in the evening, you should be thinking about, marveling in your mind about the beauty of creation as you offer those words. So as you say to your host or hostess, thank you so much for having me, this is what you could be thinking about to make that expression of gratitude all the more important and impactful for you.
And that way, sometimes, not always, sometimes you go to someone's house, you give a present, maybe a box of candy or flowers or something.
I think that's a different expression of gratitude than what this is suggesting, right? It's a nice thing to do. It's a way to show that you're committing also to making it a nice experience and offering them an expression of gratitude. But this is really about just to think about all that they did for you. However, there's a however, a bad guest, what does he say? What effort did he put on? I only ate 1 piece of bread. Only had 1 piece of meat, only drank 1 cup of wine. All that the effort that the homeowner expended, he only did on behalf of his wife and children. There was a very big meal prepared, of which I ate a small fraction.
And whose fault is that?
I mean, listen, I never leave hungry from those meals. I didn't make them, I'm saying, right? But again, I should say,
It's an attitude.
Anita,
It's the attitude you have.
it's the attitude. Both of these things are true, by the way. Right? The host did prepare all this meat and all these loaves and all this wine. And the benefit of it was shared by all who were there. The host and his family and any other guests. And you can choose to either see all of the effort done solely and especially for you, or you can choose only to be grateful for the fraction of the preparation that you took advantage of. And we have this choice in how we live our life to do one or the other.
I don't think we have a choice.
Judith says she doesn't think we have a choice. Why not?
Because I just don't think you have a choice. To me,
Yeah,
you are
because
grateful.
what?
Can you speak up a little bit for everybody?
To me, you are grateful to be invited, to be part of
Right,
it.
so you're passing judgment, understandably so.
Yeah, I am.
All I'm saying is there are two roads here to be taken. A good person only takes one. Right? But we all know people. We all know people. Whether it's in this example or others who see the world through that sort of what good was this for me? Susan.
So. When somebody prepares a meal for their family,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times they don't go to that extra effort if they do when they have a company.
Sure.
And so. By the first example, you're acknowledging the extra effort. To pick up all the toys, they put a nice tablecloth on, all those things. You're acknowledging, this is not the way they eat every night. You're acknowledging that and so, the second person obviously, has a negative view of the whole world.
Exactly. That's the idea. Judith is like, people, you're allowed to walk around with negativity. You shouldn't. It's not against the law. You're not gonna get arrested for it. People do. This whole conversation is about how we ought. We ought to walk through life like that first guest. And I think on the back end, it's if we do, our experience of this world will be better for us. There's a self-serving reason that we should express gratitude outwards towards others because it makes us feel better.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of the idea of Musar is that you do these things, you appreciate what other folks do in your life for you because it makes your life experience better. Right? Now listen, again, like I don't think there are very many hosts or very many guests who actually would say to their host, you only ate one piece of bread, you only made one piece of meat. I mean, listen, I've been to a meal where there actually was only one piece of meat for me, and I wasn't happy, right? But like, that's different. But the point is that this is about what the internal dialogue you have with yourself. What are you telling yourself as you're, doing that Jewish goodbye of 14 times saying, have a good night, Shabbat Shalom, I'll see you soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. What are you telling yourself you're thankful for? Are you thankful for the one piece of bread, the one piece of meat, the one cup of wine you drank?
No.
Which is perfectly, listen, that's the benefit you receive from that meal. Thank you for what you gave me. Thank you so much. Or are you taking the more expansive? Of course you should be
Thanks for inviting me and making me
Exactly.
part of this. That's what you should be thankful.
Of course you should. Of course you
Thank
should.
you for inviting me.
Shana.
I was just thinking, like, on the backside of this, that often we are hosting or welcoming people and what mindset do we have? Like, so often you can enter a space, like if you're the guest and you can feel the labor, not the blessing that someone's able to host you, but just sort of like the exhaustion and fatigue and labor, like
Oh, you're
you're entering that space.
Yeah.
As I guess, so I'm just thinking like, it's not in the tale, it's maybe a little more implied, but like when we host.
Yeah.
So also keep that like gratitude front and center so that what people are coming into the space isn't like, I just, I'm exhausted.
Right, exactly.
Inviting you. It's-
Right, listen, if you,
Yeah,
to be
think about
a good host, there's gratitude to be expressed there, right? Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me the pleasure of putting on this meal for you. Thank you for giving me the pleasure and opportunity of sharing a bit of what I have with you. Thank you for blessing us with your presence
We
tonight.
know
All
that,
the-
you feel the
Yeah.
difference when you enter those spaces.
Yeah,
And if you've ever been to a meal at her house, she
That
is
was not
so
the conversation.
gracious, she is so, she goes overboard with being so kind and so many things. She's wonderful host.
Can I ask you something?
yeah,
Some people are negative.
yeah,
If you're negative, then you're not offering gratitude.
can you be negative and still offer gratitude? Because if you see everything in a negative form, what are you thanking for?
So I think this is the whole point of the conversation, and my answer is yes and. Right? Yes, and in my mind, to be negative and offer gratitude is the second person who limits their gratitude to those very tangible things, just the very basic things they have to express their gratitude for without being a schnook. Right? If you don't even say thank you for the bread that you were given, then you're not even meeting the responsibility of being gracious and thankful. But this negativity, that's what limits what you can understand you should be grateful for to only those things. And I'm going to use that opportunity to push us forward into a beginning of a Musar teaching for Rabbeinu Asher. Don't expect gratitude from people because they tend to hide from the good and focus on the bad. Just as Liliana suggested, right?
Right.
There's this wonderful question that anyone who studies ethics raises, which is, do we have ethics to guide us toward the good and the right? Or do we have ethics to prevent us from going towards the wrong and the bad? Right? Right? Are people, and implied in that is the question, what is our natural inclination? What is our natural disposition? If you ask the Renaissance philosophers, they're going to have different answers. Thomas Hobbes is going to say that people, if left to their own devices, are naturally bad, and they will devolve into anarchy, and it will be terrible. And the only way we can survive is if we put down our natural inclinations and limit ourselves. And his contemporaries would say, no, actually, if left to our own devices, we will lead and bring ourselves to the good.
Yeah.
And we will see the benefits of that. And our tradition, I think, is somewhere in the middle. Right? I think that we recognize, we say we have both. We have our Yetzer HaTov, our good inclination, and we have our Yetzer Hara. Right? And they are there in both of us. No one doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. No one doesn't have a Yetzer HaTov. We have the capacity for both. And of course, our tradition guides us to our very best of our ability to activate and to focus on and to feed our Yetzer HaTov, right? Which is why this is called Hakarat HaTov, right? Guiding us and appreciating the good, knowing that in each of us there is an inclination toward the bad that we are trying to keep in check.
I don't agree.
You don't agree, Neil?
No, I don't agree. But
To which part? All of it? Well, some of it?
I don't agree that we're inclined to the bad. Okay,
That's not what I said.
but that's what I heard. I'm sorry.
What I said is we have inclinations to both good and bad. We have within us a Yetzer HaTov Hara, all of us. And we have to keep it in check. Right? What I wasn't saying is we are either, like Thomas Hobbes says, we are bad.
Bad.
We are bad. As a species, psychologically, we are inclined to the bad. That is who we are by definition. As one, I'm not suggesting that's how we see the world.
Okay, but by the very name Judaism, which is taken from Judah, which means in itself, I'm grateful.
Uh-huh.
So that's who we are.
So that's who we are with the benefit of 3,000 years of Torah in our tradition. Right now, again, now we're getting like really philosophical, really epistemological, right? So do we, the people, the Jewish people, do we need the Torah to remind us that we should be grateful? Or did God give us the Torah to give us a guidance on how to demonstrate the gratitude that we know is innate to who we are? Because we can really get into it here. And I think the answer is probably that one, which is most people have the capacity for gratitude, or even all people. But what binds us together as a nation is that we have come to realize that living life with gratitude is a darn good way to live a life. And we've learned that through the thousands of years of learning Torah that we have been blessed with. And I say that not wanting to push any farther than saying something about us in our in who we are categorically or constitutionally that makes us better than anybody else. I wouldn't say that. earlier in our tradition, they may have suggested that, and there are certainly midrashim who suggest that God gave us the Torah because nobody else wanted it. We wanted it. We wanted to live our life this way. We wanted to be challenged toward the good. Okay. So Rabbeinu Asher, I think, though, is a little more cynical, a little more pessimistic. Don't expect gratitude because they tend to hide from the good and focus on the bad. It's easy to be a kvetch. You know why? Kvetch? A complainer. It's easy to be a kvetch because there's a lot to kvetch about, especially in the Middle Ages. If you were Jewish in Europe in the 1500s, not a lot of good for our people coming out around that time. And Baki Ibn Pekuda gives us another way to think about this. Many good things are left unenjoyed. And the happiness to be had from them becomes tainted, either because people do not recognize the good in it, or they do not realize its value. Right? So Judith, I'm going to continue to push back on what you said before, because for me, choice is such an important part of these teachings. Meaning that we have agency in what lenses we choose to look at the world through. We can look at the world and focus on the bad, or we can look at the world and focus on the good. That is part of what it means to be human beings. That is part of how God has created us. That agency is part of what makes us B'Tselem Elohim, made in the image of God. We have a choice to make. Our tradition is guiding us towards which choice to make. Choice of seeing the world through the lens of the good. Choice of seeing the world to see the reasons to be happy and to see the values. And Asher and Ibn Pekuda are lamenting that so many people so frequently do not.
Their choice.
Yes,
Their choice.
their choice.
Right.
Jill.
I could choose, I could choose.
That like, I believe that if I, I may see the glass half full and other people may see the glass half empty.
Mhm.
But if I expect, it says, don't expect expect gratitude from people. If I expect those people who see the glass half empty to see the glass half full, all that's gonna do is frustrate me.
And how might
I
our
have expectations of these people who choose not to see the glass half empty.
and what might our tradition challenge us to think even more gratefully about that glass? There's water.
Right,
It's got water.
right.
There's water. Forget about it. There's water.
Hey,
Thank God.
Can't you always,
Mine doesn't, but thank God.
can't you always look at the things that have been awful in your life and emphasize that?
Of course you can.
Rather than,
Yeah,
so that's a choice you make.
that's a choice you make. Right? You can focus on the bad.
You can focus on the bad, Susan.
Yeah, Phyllis, you can focus on the bad, or you can choose to focus on the good, right? There's that other story you may have heard of the Ish Gamzo, right? The Ish Gamzo comes from the Hebrew, because all he would say was Gamzo Latova. This too is for the good. The Ish Gamzo is the this too man. Because to everything that happens, he says, this too is for the good. That is taking this idea of Hakarat Tov to the very extreme. Right? I had this experience a little bit on Sunday evening. Sunday evening, the Federation, the JCRC, hosted a screening of the documentary about the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And I was asked to moderate a panel that had a survivor of the shooting, and we had our local security director for our federation. We had the man who was the security director for the federations of Pittsburgh at the time, who is now the national director of security. And I also had the mayor of Parkland from the time when the Parkland shooting happened on this panel. But I asked them the Gamzo question, right? It's been 6 years. What improvements have we made as a community that came as a result of the shooting? Right now, listen, no one would suggest that we should have had the shooting. And no one would have suggested that we should have leveraged the lives of those 11 victims and the survivors to get the gains that we got as a result of it. But one pathway to prevent us from despair is to say, as awful as this thing was, are there things that came as a result, as a response to it, that prevent this from happening again, that make the world safer after the fact, without denying the negativity of what happened? And they said, yeah, right? We've learned even more about how to keep ourselves safe. We've learned even more the necessity of doing trainings and things like that in our Jewish community. Is one of the things that happened out of that was that philanthropists from Pittsburgh and specifically invested a huge amount of money into an intelligence center based in Chicago. The Jewish community of the country, the Federation, has its own intelligence center now. That is an outcome of that event, as awful as that event was. So those 11 victims did not die in vain. Right? That is the extreme example, the Ish Gamzo, but it was an important thing for us to talk about on Sunday evening. As awful as it was. This is more personal. This idea is just for me, right? I am not the person who's making the decisions about what we do in the aftermath of a national tragedy, but Rabbeinu Asher, Rabbi Baki and Makuda are showing us that there's an opportunity to recognize or not recognize, implied of which is if we do, our lives are to be made better, or our lives will be made better. Rabbi Eliezer Papo, a person who has received the smallest benefit from their friend, is obligated to permanently engrave on their hearts not to repay their friend with any evil and to bestow whatever favors one can upon. If someone does a kindness for you, for how long are you indebted to them emotionally for that kindness?
Forever.
Forever. I want you to take a moment. They can also be indebted to you. But I'm sure you all have memories from your formative years when people did kindnesses for you, for which you are still reaping the benefits. I can think, teachers, camp counselors, rabbis of mine, professors in college, friends. Well, I remember, I can think, the earliest one that I can think of was from 30 years ago. I'm only 41.
What happened?
I had a counselor who stuck his neck out for me, who gave me a bit of wisdom that was for my benefit. It didn't do it. It wasn't anything about him. He was just doing his job as a counselor, right? Sharing with me some wisdom that is wisdom that if I were to map my entire journey, receiving that wisdom in the summer of 1993 was wisdom that I needed to receive.
You took it to heart.
I took it.
Oh, okay then.
I wonder where that phrase came from. I took it to heart exactly. I engraved it on my heart. Yeah. Barbara.
I don't think about that I would be indebted. It's in my heart and in my soul, and they are, and they will be. And it helped move me to the next place.
So without disagreeing with that.
And I'm able to share that with you or somebody else.
So I want to point something out about what Rabbi Papa was suggesting here, which is just remembering that it happened is not enough. Right? He lays out that we have obligations that come as a result of that memory, not to repay them with evil, to bestow favors upon them when we can.
Yeah.
Right. Just remembering it is the beginning of that. So the indebtedness is not to remember, it's that you have now something to do with that remembering.
And I can take that and share it with somebody else. because of
Potentially.
What I learned.
But this is about him in particular, that person in particular, right? It's a both and, right? The second idea is that if I act with gratitude and I put gratitude out into the world and I do things for other people, right? I can turn this into a chain. Someone benefited me, inspired by that, I go benefit someone else, inspired by that, they go benefit. It goes down the chain. That's, a daisy chain is great also. But what Papa was saying is that you actually have an ode that you owe back to that original person. Another way to think about it. Right? This is pretty aspirational. This is pretty high.
Think about, when you do something with somebody else, don't you do it because you want to do it, or do you do it because, sort of get some, they talk about your teaching, if you counsel and all that.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
Are you doing something good for him because you want to do it, or you feel you have to do it?
I mean, listen, there's a little bit of both, but I think the point is that, if we look at this text, we've got two actors here. We have the person who has received, that's actor B. And we have the friend who did, that's actor A, right? The friend who did does what they did without any expectation. They did it because they wanted to do a kindness for their friend. This is about how do you think about yourself when you're the recipient of a kindness? Even though that person didn't expect anything from you, or perhaps especially because that person didn't expect anything from you, you should do stuff back to them. Did your hand go up a second ago? I thought I saw.
But that's assuming that you are aware that you are receiving kindness.
Sure. Yeah.
So think of like all day long, honestly, you could be like,
Yeah.
I see preoccupied, people are doing something kind, you don't even notice someone kept the door open for you, or bigger thing.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's like,
Mhm.
in some ways, that becomes more of like a humanity thing than a specific person. If you think over the course of a day,
Right.
someone left you into
Right.
a lane on the highway.
Uh-huh.
And like all those people,
Yeah.
it's like, where are they?
Yeah.
You don't even know them.
Right.
So it's.
So one way is to pay it forward. Yeah.
Right.
Remember, Musar is about heightening our awarenesses. So to that exact point, you can never have completed your Musar, right? You're never full because there's always more. But at a time when you are focusing on Musar, and particularly on Hakarat HaTov, you're going to have an extra special attention. You're going to have your eyes behind your head, your sixth sense out for what are the ways that folks are benefiting me that I wouldn't, if I wasn't paying attention, I wouldn't. Yeah.
And sometimes someone does kindness for you
Yeah.
and you never see them again.
Uh-huh.
And once it happened to me that someone did a kindness for me,
Mhm.
and when she dropped me off where I needed to be, because I was stranded in a cemetery. And she said to me, just pay it forward.
Yeah.
And I have many times.
Mhm.
You never get the chance
Right.
to repay that friend. That person was not a friend.
One
but a
thing that I
very
want to
kind person.
make clear, these various texts, none of them are all inclusive. Right? So it's not that the only way to be gracious is to repay your friend the kindnesses they paid you and not do them harm. It's one way to be grateful is to repay your friend in kindnesses and not repay them with harm. Rabbi Dester is going to offer us a different way to think about gratitude. True gratitude derives from the force of giving, while ingratitude is spawned by the power of taking. I'm going to say that again. True gratitude derives from the force of giving, while ingratitude is spawned by the power of taking. Turns everything on its head.
So either you're a giver or a receiver.
I would not put giver and receiver as opposites in that. I would say you're a giver or you're a taker.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I thought so.
Yeah,
I thought so.
thank you.
Right?
Sometimes you're gracious just by receiving.
Totally.
Somebody offers you something that you don't really want, but you're
Yeah.
gracious in accepting it.
For sure.
Yeah, because I don't want it, I'm grateful, you said I don't want it, instead of someone give it something.
We've got a lot of holidays coming down the pike. One of them is not for a couple of months, 2.5 months or so. Right? Not Hanukkah, the secular one in November. Thanksgiving. Is our holiday of gratitude, where we give thanks. It's not thanks taking. Not thanks receiving. It's Thanksgiving. Right now, you're giving something, perhaps in reply to receive something else. But our whole sense of gratitude is that when we receive something, there's a ledger there that is now out of balance. And the way that we rebalance it is by doing something to rebalance it. It could just be offering appreciation. Someone does a kindness for you. What do? You say thank you. And you express gratitude. You give thanks. And then I think there's this bigger idea that Dessler is saying is that the people who live their lives with hakarat atov on their minds, the people who live lives of gratitude, as much as they receive in life, if anyone were to evaluate them from the outside, how would they describe that person? As a giver. Right? That and I'm going to sort of paraphrase this, that the depth of someone's gratitude can be measured in how giving they are. And the depth, I can write this as a sermon, the depth of someone's ingratitude is by how much they take. Right? There's implied in this idea of hakarat atov in Musar that when you are a person who inclines toward thankfulness, you're going to give, you're going to give, you're going to give, you're going to give. Because you know how good it feels to receive. And you want to share that feeling with other folks.
Right.
And the daisy chains its way up. Would that we all live this way? How wonderful would it be? That's Phyllis's big complaint, and she's right. We should all live this way.
But do you think that it has to do the way you grew up, also, what you saw at home?
Yeah, of course.
Because
Of course. Because Liliana asked, is this about the way that, does this come from the way that you're raised, what you saw at home? I would say, of course, it's what you saw at home. It's how your community acted. It's how you're sitting. I mean, listen, this is a communal undertaking. Right? Raising children is in some ways a communal undertaking. And those of us who were in this room in the synagogue, we do this together. Right? The family, it's communal. What is the most basic form of community? Any sociologists here? Family, right? The family unit is the most basic community. And then it grows out from there, from nuclear family to extended family to neighbors. And then, again, this is where we as Jews have this additional gloss, which is there's something about, our inclination towards community. And even in a place like Boca Raton, Delray Beach, Boynton Beach, Lighthouse Point, where many of us live in secluded areas. We live behind gates. We live in high-rise building, wherever we are, right? We live much, much, much more detached from our neighbors than certainly our ancestors who wrote these texts, who were living in Stettlachen, right? And yet, this still resonates for us. We care about how we interact with our neighbors. We care about what our children appreciate in school. And at least in the synagogue community, this is part of why we're part of a synagogue community. We want to express and instill and teach and validate and do all these things for these kinds of things at every age. Certainly for our children, but you're all here for a reason. You came here today because you wanted to learn more about gratitude. Good on you. 5,000 members of the synagogue. And the other 975 didn't make this choice. It's okay. They'll pick something else. No shame.
And they can always watch it.
And they can always watch it on YouTube, exactly. Right? But this speaks to the idea that in our tradition, you can't do everything all at once. It's too much. So you pick your spots. And the idea of Musar is, how do I pick my spot when it comes to these various pieces like gratitude. Sorry.
Liliana replied conversely to what you both just said. Or you don't get it at home and you know it inwardly, this is not the kind of person I want to be.
Yeah.
And so you learn
Mhm.
to be the right thing.
One of I was mentioning that Tammy and I are rewatching Ted Lasso just for fun. And a lot of this stuff is, I mean, listen, Ted Lasso is all about putting out into the world a particular way of seeing the world. And he's overwhelming with gratitude. And what's interesting is that one of the other main characters is a person, and you see this in the show, who you get to know who his father was, who was an awful, terrible human being. Doesn't surprise then that he, as talented as a football player he is, he's an awful, terrible human being. And part of the arc of the show is him learning that actually you can live your life differently than the example you got from your father. But it took a series of experiences, frankly, really disappointing ones for him to say, you know what? I'm not going to get everything I want in a life just from being good at football. And eventually I'm not going to be good enough at football to get what I want out of life. And so I have to do things about how I behave. It was very powerful. Very powerful. All right, we have just a few minutes left. Two more texts. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. If one appreciates that all the needs one has fulfilled by others are truly goodness and kindness, he most certainly increases the love and friendship in the world and comes to realize that he exists in a world of kindness. If you appreciate the kindness you receive, you live in a world of kindness. When one hides from this recognition, the world is gray. Right? We can imagine a world where everyone appreciated the gifts that they were given. We can imagine a world where people don't appreciate the world in which they are given. One's perception is that every person is only doing his job. Every merchant only wants to profit. The doctor only wants his payments. The educator only his salary. There is no goodness, no kindness, and no friendship. The world is sucked dry. No. We want to live in a bright world, a world of goodness and kindness, of love and friendship. This illuminated world is built through showing gratitude to all. Gratitude rejoices with her sister Joy and is always ready to light a candle and have a party. Gratitude doesn't much like the old cronies of boredom, despair, or taking life back. Some final thoughts, final questions, final wonderings.
Reminded me, when I say gratitude rejoices with her sister, Joy. I think my own sister, and if I had one word to describe her, it would be joy.
I've always wondered about this. Is this just the grammatical? Because gratitude, hakarat hatov, is feminine in the Hebrew language, and so is simcha, right? It could be just be the, like, you know, the translation translated with the feminine pronoun as opposed to its, you know, gratitude rejoices with its sister Joy or its sibling Joy would have been perfectly appropriate in English. But translating it with the gender, with a specific gender, and this gender just sort of amplifies it. It makes it, you know, anthropomorphizes it into something that you can picture like a Chagall painting, gratitude and joy dancing, holding hands with a candle in a party. So here we are with 2 minutes left in the hour and with about 25 days left in the Jewish year, right? This is just one example, right? We are entering into 5785. We are given the opportunity, as we are every single year, to wipe the slate clean, to reorient ourselves, to set a new course, and to have new areas of focus for ourselves in the year. If gratitude is what you need for yourself for the year, I hope that you found this meaningful, right? That is, you can challenge yourself to think about what are ways in which I can express more gratitude this year. What are the ways in which gratitude can manifest? I think we explored a couple of different ones, right? And if for you, for this year, if gratitude is not the highest thing on your priority, that's okay. If there are other parts of our tradition or other parts of human life that you feel like what I really need for this year is patience. There's patience to learn about. Right? And again, the same idea. There's too much patience, there's not enough patience, there's the right amount of patience. There's patience towards the people around us, patience towards the world, patience that it come natural to us, and patience that we have to push ourselves to try to express. This is the idea with the new year, is that it's an opportunity to reinvest in ourselves. And any one of these things, if we increase our level of gratitude even a little bit, our lives will be made better. If we increase our patience a little bit, or our trust a little bit, or our appreciation of quietude a little bit, our lives can be made better. That's what Musar tries to teach, and why I think it's a really wonderful opportunity in thinking about how the new year, why it's a good thing. So, last question, last time.
I do have a question. So all the sayings that you chose, are they represented over centuries? Are they-
Yeah. The Musar tradition goes back about 1,000 years, but these were all 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, 19th centuries. Not modern, but not ancient in that medieval period.
So they're basically orthodox.
I mean, they're orthodox, but I push back on applying that label to that time period. Because I think sociologically, you only have orthodoxy once you have non-orthodoxy. Right? Orthodoxy and non-orthodoxy are both responses to modernity and the Enlightenment. Before the Enlightenment, everyone was Jewish. Right? And no one had these sort of philosophical approaches to how people were, and even orthodoxy, right? The mitzvot, the opportunities are their opportunities. Did every person go to shul every single day? No. Did you know you were supposed to go to shul every day? Yes. If you missed an opportunity, you missed an opportunity, right? Were most people kosher? Yes. Did sometimes people make mistakes? Yes. If you were starving, should you eat something not kosher? Yes. That's how people live. So, but what I love about Musar is these things are not about it's not about halacha, it's not about Shabbat, it's about how we live our lives, not what we do with our behavior. So this is sort of it's not orthodox because it predates orthodoxy, but it also, I think, exists on a different plane. Right? I think the Reformed Jew, the Orthodox Jew, the Satmar Chassid could fulfill all of these in their own way, without moving away from what their philosophical commitment to Judaism look like. Which is why I think it's great, because it actually sort of brings us together as a nation in ways that other parts of our tradition actually tend to pull us apart a little bit. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Leon.
Thank you.
They had the wrong link on the website. If you heard anybody that they had it wrong. Oh, goodness. That happened to me one time too. Yeah. Oh, goodness.
And they're off to the rain today.
Yeah.